Welcome, rational thinkers and champions of evidence-based reasoning, to the Free of Faith podcast. This is the place where we dare to peel back the comforting but opaque layers of faith-based claims and expose their logical shortcomings. Today, we're tackling a question that should make anyone pause. If God is omnipotent, why does he need your money? Imagine encountering a wizard who claims to possess limitless power. He can be anywhere instantly, transform ordinary materials into wealth, and sustain himself without human help. Sounds impressive, right? But what if this all-powerful wizard then starts asking you for money to feed the poor? Wouldn't that raise a red flag? If he truly had supernatural capabilities and could place food in front of starving children with the quick wave of his wand, why the financial dependency? This is precisely the contradiction found at the heart of modern religious institutions. Many Christian denominations teach that faith alone is sufficient, that God is all-powerful, and that he provides for his people. Yet, these same institutions insist that financial contributions are necessary to carry out his will. Sure, some of this money does go to noble causes like feeding the hungry and supporting schools. But let's be honest. Another significant portion funds the salaries and benefits of church leaders. Here's a staggering fact. Only 30% of Christian ministers in the United States believe that an annual salary exceeding $100,000 is excessive for full-time ministry. This salary fell in the 85th percentile of all U.S. annual salaries the year of the survey. That statistic alone should make us ask the question, would a truly omnipotent deity rely on human financial structures to function? To put this into perspective, consider what $100,000 could accomplish if allocated differently. Humanitarian organizations like UNICEF and the World Food Program estimate that treating a severely malnourished child with therapeutic food and basic medical care costs around $50 to $100 per child. A mid-range estimate of $75 per child means that the same amount paid to a single pastor could instead save approximately 1,333 starving children. Even at the highest estimate of $100 per child, it could still save 1,000 lives. When framed this way, the dilemma becomes even starker. How does an institution claiming divine guidance justify compensating ministers at levels that could instead be preventing large-scale child starvation? What material comforts does an actual Christian pastor deserve? How much were the apostles paid? How much money was spent on their meeting places? Some theologians argue that financial contributions serve as a test of faith that allows believers to express their devotion and commitment to God. However, this raises an important question. If God is omniscient, does he not already know the depth of a believer's faith? Wouldn't acts of service, kindness, or integrity be more meaningful demonstrations of devotion than financial contributions? Testing faith through financial means seems unnecessary for an all-knowing deity. Consider the very definition of omnipotence. If God possesses boundless power, knowledge, and resources, why would he require money to fulfill his goals? Money exists because we have limitations. We need it to exchange resources, build infrastructure, and sustain communities. An all-powerful being, however, should be able to bypass these human constraints entirely. An omnipotent God could provide directly for the needy without placing financial demands on his followers, who could be, instead, spreading the gospel. The expectation that believers must fund a deity's work raises troubling concerns. Churches often teach that failing to give may indicate a lack of faith. But let's follow the money. A large portion of these donations end up maintaining church buildings, supporting administrative costs, and providing preachers with various comforts. If God truly prioritized the well-being of humanity, wouldn't his system operate without mirroring human corporate structures? Here's another point to consider. Early Christianity had no church buildings, no paid clergy, and no institutional fundraising. The first followers of Jesus met in homes and shared resources freely, without an emphasis on tithing. If the most transformative period of Christian history required no financial infrastructure, why does today's church insist that money is essential? This brings us to a key question. If God truly exists and is both omnipotent and benevolent, wouldn't he distinguish himself by requiring nothing from his followers? In a world where nearly every deity throughout history has demanded material offerings, an alleged God who provides without asking for anything in return would stand out as more likely divine. Instead, religious institutions today function much like human businesses under the guise of faith. If churches cannot sustain themselves without money, doesn't that suggest a limitation inconsistent with the very nature of an all-powerful being? Let's lay it out logically. A truly omnipotent God would not require financial support from humans to accomplish his will. Yet, Christian churches claim that financial support is essential for advancing God's purposes. Therefore, either these institutions misunderstand God's nature, or the concept of a financially dependent deity contradicts the very idea of omnipotence. In other words, something doesn't add up. Faith often asks you to suspend critical thinking, but reason insists that we ask questions. If God is truly self-sufficient, then religious institutions should not function like businesses dependent on human wealth. If a deity needs money, then perhaps it's not a deity at all, but just an institution that has mastered the art of fundraising. If this conversation has sparked some questions or even some discomfort, that's a good thing. Questioning is the first step toward clarity. Don't settle for easy answers or platitudes. Dive deeper, explore further, and demand evidence. Head over to Free of Faith to read the full article and join the discussion. Let's keep this conversation going, because the pursuit of truth doesn't stop at questioning. It's about finding answers that actually make sense. Thank you for tuning in to the Free of Faith podcast, where we expose the logical failings of faith and celebrate the clarity that comes with reason. Until next time, stay skeptical, stay curious, and remember, rationality always outperforms faith. Engage reality, and I'll see you soon.